Hello, this video is going to step you through the initial steps for creating your Snowflake for the STEM pod project. Hopefully, you have answered these questions from the Snowflake project Google Doc that really work for you to start thinking about the geometry of a snowflake. And geometry is very important to sort of understand in order to describe or create objects in OnShape CAD, as well as understanding sort of dimensions and understanding angles, etc. And then you begin to think about what are some tools in OnShape that I can use to efficiently make my design. So we know snowflakes are symmetrical, so we can certainly use mirror tools, and we can certainly use circular pattern tools. We're going to look at the initial, some of the initial dimension things. So the outer circle diameter has to be 80 millimeters. So that means this outer circle. And then we need to have a 5 millimeter gap between the outer edge and the beginning of any part of the snowflake. So that means 5 millimeters on each side, which means what's the size of the circle that the snowflake has to fit into? Hopefully you figured that math out. So let's begin in OnShape. So I've started a new, created a new project. I'm going to the document menu because I need to make sure my workspace units are millimeters. And click the green check to accept. And now I can begin to, first I need to create a sketch. And I will choose the top view or top plane as my sketch plane. And I'm going to click the top portion of my cube so that I'm looking normal or flat onto the top view. So the first thing I want to do is create a circle where the center is locked to the origin, so I can pull that out. And that circle is going to be 80 millimeters. And then I'm going to create another circle, but I'm going to create this circle using construction lines because I just want it to be a circle that's going to bound or constrain my snowflake. And that had to be how big? If 5 centimeters off each side. Hopefully you did the math right. It should be a 70. And I'm going to move these dimensions just sort of up and out of the way so they don't get in the way of my design. So as we look at the snowflake, we want to initially follow some of these steps. As you can see, the first thing that happens here is that there is a vertical line drawn and then another line drawn at a 60-degree angle. In OnShape, that's actually relatively easy to do. To draw a line is pretty straightforward, especially if I'm going from the origin and I'm going straight up. I can lock onto that vertical axis line. I don't care how long that line is. I can draw another line, again, originating from the origin off this way. Again, it doesn't really matter about the length, and the angle doesn't really matter either, at least not right now. In order to make these two lines exactly at 60 degrees, which is going to be really important if you're going to try to do any kind of mirroring or you're going to try to do any kind of circular pattern to make a six-sided snowflake. So using the dimension tool, I can click one line. You'll notice it automatically creates a dimension. But as soon as I click another line, it assumes you mean the angle. So I can click that and I can actually physically type in, it needs to be 60 degrees. And I can kind of enter that relatively easily. So again, looking at the rest, I need to create some lines that are exactly, in this case, 5 millimeters away from the two lines I just drew, right? So I'm creating another set of lines that are offset from the original two lines that I drew. There is a tool in OnShape to allow us to do that. It's called the offset tool. It looks like this. So let's go over and try that. So we're going to use the offset tool and we're going to create this line. And you can see automatically it creates an offset of exactly 5 millimeters. If I wanted it to be offset on the other side, I could just click the white arrow and it would offset to the other side. But I wanted to offset to the inside. And to accept this, I just have to sort of click in this space. And that opens up the dimension, and I could change that dimension. I could change that offset. It could be 10 millimeters, or I could specify it to be 6 millimeters, whatever I feel is right. Our directions say 5, so I'm going to leave it at 5. I'm going to do offset tool again, and I'm going to offset from this line. Again, I want it to the inside, so it's going to that side. And I want it 5 millimeters, so I can just click in this space in here, and it accepts it as 5 millimeters, enter. It's editable, so I can always go back and change that if I want. Now, to cap off the snowflake, in the picture here, you can see that that line is just going all the way across from intersection point over here to intersection point over here. So why don't I go ahead and do that? So I'm going to draw a line that goes from this intersection right here all the way over to this intersection right here. And notice that both the line, this line right here, and this construction circle are both highlighted, which means it's snapping to that intersection. And that'll sort of cap off the snowflake. All right, so we have all the basic lines for a super simple snowflake. And what I'll do now is I'm just going to accept and close my sketch and just use the extrude tool to extrude these little portions of the snowflake, right? And those will just represent the arms or the initial arms of a snowflake. And let's just, I would say extrude no more than, I think 10 millimeters is what it says on the handout. And we'll take a look, and that looks like too much, so we'll just do 5. And then we can just hit accept. And there we have a very simple snowflake. And what I'm going to use, instead of doing in the two-dimensional tools, the circular pattern tool that is hiding underneath a linear pattern, this circular pattern tool, which you used for the spinner, we're going to use the three-dimensional. So not in the sketch mode, but in the three-dimensional tools, there's also underneath linear pattern a circular pattern tool. This works slightly different than the two-dimensional circular pattern tool, which always revolves around the origin. The circular pattern tool requires an edge or a line to revolve around. So if I choose circular pattern tool, it's going to ask, what entities do you want to pattern? Obviously, we want to pattern that. And then it's asking for an axis. An axis has to be a line. An edge can also be a line. So I'm going to select this. I have to click in this box to make it light blue. And then notice what happens. If I were to click this edge, is that the circular pattern that I want? No, I want it to revolve around here. So I can't click one of those edges. That's not good. So I'm going to hit the X here and select a new edge. We could try, oh, maybe that edge. That looks really weird. Way too close to the swastika. We want to get rid of that. So we're going to close that. You need to select this vertical edge that comes straight out of the origin. You'll notice that there's only 4 copies, and we need to have 6. And if I click to accept, there I have a very basic snowflake. Using the sketching tools, using some basic geometry and angles, and using the three-dimensional circular pattern tool. But the handout shows this slightly more complex snowflake. So let's figure that out. I have another snowflake, the basic setup all set to go in the sketch here. And I just want to have a little point here that I can kind of add to my snowflake to add a little bit of flavor. Now, you could draw 2 lines that really honestly don't need to be symmetrical at all. And you could extrude that easily enough. Just hitting the green check box to accept the sketch and using extrude to extrude these pieces. And we're extruding to 5 millimeters. and we accept. And there is a kind of an odd looking thing there, but and we can do the circular pattern tool. And again, underneath the linear pattern, there's circular pattern in the three-dimensional tools. Select the entities that you want to pattern. Select the axes you want to pattern around. Select the number of patterns, 6. Accept. Take a look at this from the top view, and we have some kind of snowflake there. If you want to make it look exactly like what you see here in the handout, that's very symmetrical. We have to add this little construction line that you see here in order to sort of make it symmetrical. So instead of redoing everything, I'm just going to go back to the original sketch. And I'm going to draw a line, make it a construction line, that's going to pass through this point here. Right? So it's going to go right up to that intersection of that point. And I'm going to specify, using my dimension tool, that this line has to be 30 degrees, right? 30 degrees, 30. Notice that it drags the point, it drags this vertex over, and we now have a line that goes right up through the center of our 60 degrees. To make both of these lines symmetrical, we can use the symmetrical constraint over here, symmetric. You choose the line across which it needs to be symmetric, or mirror, I guess. And then you select the two edges that need to be symmetric, and you'll see that they change. And we can hit accept this sketch. And the cool thing is everything else updates. The extrude updates, the circular pattern updates, and there is our very symmetrical snowflake. And we're pretty much done making a very simple snowflake. The final steps to sort of finishing this off would be to take all these 3 individual parts, or sorry, 6 individual parts. You can see in the parts menu, there's 6 individual parts here. We need to make them all one. To combine them all, you're using the Boolean tool. And we're choosing the union. So you can draw a little box around all the parts, and the Boolean union will union all those parts together, and you accept. And you can see there's no longer any lines here. This is one solid object, and I am done. I can just add a small drilled hole here so that I can put a string through it so I can hang it. And again, I might as well just, it's much easier just to do this in a new sketch and select the top surface of the snowflake as my sketch plane. And then all I need to, top surface here, there we go, draw a small circle. Now notice how I'm snapping. It's snapping to the vertical line here. You can kind of see it turn a little orange. And I'm going up here, I'm drawing this out, and I think I said a 2 millimeter hole is big enough to put a little string through. I'm going to accept and close the sketch and do an extrude of that little circle, that little hole. But I want to make sure that I am removing. And you can see that it's extruding down through the bottom. So it is making a hole there. I click to accept, and there's a little hole. And in essence, I am done my snowflake. If I want to make a much more complex snowflake, which is really what I'm asking you to do, I have another snowflake here ready to go. And you can see in the sketch, I've started with 30 degrees. And I'm just doing a 30-degree portion. And I'm going to choose to do the mirror tool and then the circular pattern tool. And obviously, I used a lot of the constraint tools and dimension tools to make this fancy snowflake. But let's extrude this so you can kind of see how this goes. I extrude this. I'm extruding this portion. And I'm extruding this portion. And 5 millimeters. You can see there's this much more complex snowflake. I'm going to accept this. And there is a complicated snowflake. I need to mirror across this edge, right, across that vertical line. So I will do that. That vertical line is represented by the right plane. So let's do the mirror tool. Mirror. It's going to ask you the entities to mirror. That. And then it's going to ask you the mirror plane. So I'm going to mirror across this right plane. And it makes a nice little mirror. I accept that. And there it is. So that's now 60 degrees. That's a 60-degree wedge. And now I need to do a circular pattern tool. But if you remember, the three-dimensional circular pattern tool has to revolve around a line. I do not have a line that is around the origin. If I were to just go to circular pattern tool and say I want to do a circular pattern of this, and I choose an axis and I choose, oh, well, this line, this edge, you're going to get a very awkward snowflake, right? This is not the intent. This is not what I had designed. So that's not right. What I really need is I need a line drawn from the origin vertically straight up so I can revolve around that. So I need to not do a circular pattern tool just yet. I need to create a new sketch, and I'll choose the front plane, and I will draw a line from the front plane that's vertically straight up. And again, I can kind of tell that I'm vertically because it's sort of snapping to this vertical and changing to sort of orange dotted. And I click. I don't care how long that line is. Essentially, I am done. That's all I need. Hit accept. And now I have a line from the origin going vertically straight up that allows me to do my circular pattern of that 60-degree wedge around this line. And if I choose 6 instances, accept, and I look at the top, I have this really cool complex snowflake. Now, I think you can do this as well. So go for it, have fun, and create something beautiful and creative. Thank you very much.